In this video, we will be discussing monopolies with multiple plants and how they profit maximize among these multiple plants with differing cost structures. So we have a problem here, and we are given the information that a company builds computers and owns a factory in the United States and China, and we want to find the levels of output for each factory. And we're given the following price function of P equals 2,500 minus 15Q, and then a marginal cost for the US factory of 8 plus 2.5Q per US, and we're given a marginal cost for the China factory of 3 plus quantity of China. So we would use the same profit maximization rule of marginal revenue equals marginal cost for a regular monopoly, but there are some things we have to do first. We are given two separate marginal costs, and they're for the same company producing the same good, so they're in the same market. So we have to figure out one way to combine these two, and we also need to find our marginal revenue. So in order to combine our marginal costs, we need to solve for Q first. So starting with the marginal cost of the United States factory, and we have 8 plus 2.5 times the quantity of US, we would subtract 8 from both sides, and then what we're left with is marginal cost US minus 8 equals 2.5 times the quantity of US. And then if we divide both sides by 2.5, we are left with a quantity for the United States of negative 3.2 plus 0.4 times the marginal cost for the US factory. Next, we want to do the same for the marginal cost of the China factory, which had a marginal cost of China equals 3 plus quantity of China. And what we would do is we would subtract 3 from both sides, and we get a quantity of China equals marginal cost of China minus 3. So now that we have our two quantity functions, we can combine them via horizontal summation. So we have our quantity total equals negative 3.2 plus 0.4 times the marginal cost of the US plus the marginal cost of China minus 3. Now one thing to note is while we do use the profit maximization rule of marginal revenue equals marginal cost, this marginal revenue and marginal cost are also equal to the marginal cost of each factory. So the marginal cost of China equals the marginal cost of the United States equals the marginal cost total equals the marginal revenue. So with this in mind, we can combine like terms of the two marginal costs. So what we're left with is a quantity total function of negative 6.2 plus 1.4 times the marginal cost total, or just marginal cost. Now in order to solve for our marginal cost, we would add 6.2 to both sides and get 1.4 times the marginal cost equals quantity total plus 6.2. And so if we divide both sides by 1.4, we are given a marginal cost of 0.71 quantity total plus 4.43. And so we have our marginal cost. Now in order to find our marginal revenue, we need to look back at our price function. And our price function was 2,500 minus 15Q. And in order to get to marginal revenue, we need to get the total revenue. And total revenue is equal to the price times the quantity. So we have Q times our price function of 2,500 minus 15Q. And so, by distributing that Q, we get a total revenue of 2,500 times Q minus 15Q squared. And in order to find the marginal revenue, we need to take the derivative of the total revenue function with respect to Q. And so what we get for our marginal revenue is 2,500 minus 30Q. So now that we know our marginal revenue and our marginal cost, we can follow our profit maximization rule and set them equal to each other. So what we have is 2,500 minus 30Q equals 0.71 times QT plus 4.43. And one thing to note is Q and QT are the same thing here because they represent the market quantity and our total that we produce. So what we can do is we can add 30Q to both sides and we can subtract 4.43 from both sides. And what we're left with is 2,495.57 equals 30.71 Q. And if we were to divide both sides by 30.71, we get a total quantity of 81.26. So combined, both factories will produce 81.26 computers. So we found total quantity, but we also want to find the levels of output from each factory. So in order to do that, we have to look back at our marginal cost total function, which was 0.71 times QT plus 4.43. And now we know what quantity total is, so we can plug that in to our marginal cost function. So we get 0.71 times 81.26 plus 4.43. And by plugging that into a calculator, we get a marginal cost of 62.12. So this is how much it costs to produce one more of each good from either factory. Now recall that we had the profit maximization rule of marginal revenue equals marginal cost, and we used the relationship to also find out that marginal cost of the US factory equals marginal cost of the China factory. So by using this, we can find the quantity of each factory. So by using the quantity functions that we derived earlier, we have quantity of China first, which was marginal cost of China minus 3, and we know what our marginal cost is. It is that 62.12, and we want to subtract 3 from it, so we get a quantity of China equals 59.12. Next, we'll look at the quantity of US, and that was negative 3.2 plus 0.4 times the marginal cost of the US. And since we know what the marginal cost of the US is, we would just plug it in. So we have quantity of the US equals negative 3.2 plus 0.4 times 62.12. And by plugging that into a calculator, we get a quantity of US equals 21.65. So now we have found the levels of output for each factory, and by using the profit maximization rules, these quantities will allow us to make the most profit. That will conclude this video on multi-plant monopolies.